Back here with Mike's Mustang Repairs, and in this episode, we are going to take on the biggest project we've done yet, a full suspension rebuild on this 2002 Ford Mustang GT convertible. We're going to be removing the stock springs, struts, and control arms, and replacing them with a Bilstein Pro kit, as well as new Eibach springs and control arms. I just want to call out, we're not expert mechanics here. We're just using this as a learning experience, so research what you're doing with this and other guides, and wish us luck. Here's some video of the before and after. You can see how much bounce there is in the shocks and struts on the before, and then reduced bounce on the after. Uneven tire wear, increased stopping distance, and a bumpy ride are all results of bad shocks. So we're going to try and prevent that today with this fix. We'll start in the rear of the car. The rear shocks and springs are a lot easier to do than the front. And note that we'll be doing them in steps and exchanging the sides of the car. So you might see different sides of the car, but the process is the same. For the rear, we have to remove these two clips, and then we're going to remove this back panel on both sides to get to the shocks. Just loosen them, and then there's clips up front. Alright, so I took this top piece off, and then I'm able to now get the side pieces off pretty easy. You can see the top of the shock right there. I'm gonna go inside and I'll show you where we can hit it with impact. I'm actually gonna try, you can remove from the convertible top, you can remove this wheel or well back here, and if you do these first four, you can see the shock bolt back there. I'm gonna try and get it this way because that's pretty easy to get to. All right, broke those free with the impact. We'll take them off in a minute. Let's go underneath. All right, got the car all jacked up. Jack stands are on the axle. Let's get the sway bar next, I guess. We'll disconnect this brake line and we'll remove this as well. All right, 2 bolts here. 1, 2, that'll remove the sway bar. So got it removed. Next up, all right, supporting the control arm, I was able to use a breaker bar. I actually had to get this pipe extension. It broke free the bolt, so I'm gonna go get lunch and we'll remove it in a little bit. So I hammered this bolt through. One of the tricks is you can raise and lower your jack, and it makes it a lot easier to just pull it out. So that's what you need to do. I went ahead and sped this recording up so it's watchable, but you can see me doing the process of slowly lowering the control arm and decompressing the spring. And just a reminder, springs are dangerous, so be careful here. Well, this is straight up terrifying, but it looks like there's no movement on the spring, so I think I can just take it out. I'll do that. Here you can see me removing the spring. All you need to do is pry the bottom out and the top will follow. Right now is a good time to replace these rubber insulators here before they pop off. You can see it splitting as I just touched it, so I'll have to do that. It would have been nice to do it right here when I had a lot of space though. Alright, we'll put the bottom isolator, so the pigtail starts here. I'll put this bottom isolator on. And I got the top one taped. So I'll feed this up through here. Now we'll jack it up. And you can see this bolt is pretty rusty, so I'm gonna brush it off before I put it on, and I'll put some PB Blaster on in the hopes that it'll slide right through. Wish me luck. I put some red thread locker on this bolt, and now we'll tighten it. For the shock, I think if we just pull this bolt out, I think we'll be able to remove it pretty easily. I'll try that now. Yeah, let's see what happens if I roll the jack out and lower it. Yeah, it'll come down. There we go. Decompressed. Back here, I got this pretty loose. I'll just undo this all the way. And I think I'll be able to pull it through. Put that down right there, okay. And then yeah, you can just hammer it through. Oops. Got it. At this point, I'll put the add-ons on and then get that up, and I'll feed it up through the wheel well. We'll see what happens. This is where you put an Allen wrench in the top of the shock and use a wrench on the bolt. I'd recommend ratcheting wrenches, but this is what we got for today. And you want to go until you get a nice little bulge on this rubber. That's probably good. And then got the spring and the shock in, so looks good. Let's do the other side. Took a few times, but I was able to raise and lower the jack until I could get it through. And remember that the bolt goes in towards the outside, so the nut is on the outside. Looks like there's a locking mechanism on the outside, which is good. And then it's easier to remove the nut from the outside, so I'm assuming that's why they put them there. But hey, let me put some thread locker on this, and then almost there. And this one you can just push up and you'll be able to get the bolt through. Not too bad. I'll put some thread locker on it and tighten it. I was struggling a little bit to hold the sway bar up on both sides and get it in the right spot, so I put this box here and set it up just loosely here, and then went to the other side, tighten it, and that seems to be the way to do it. So that's a good tip. Here's the pinion snubber. It's right up above the differential. I can't really show it, but it took a little bit. It kind of was full of some junk, so don't get that in your eyes, but took that off. We'll put the smaller one on now, and then we'll put that on the car. All right, so here's the fuel tank, sway bar, the differential, and then when you come up there, you'll see the pinion snubber. So right on top of the differential. I don't recommend you doing the fluid the week before. It kind of stinks, but here we are. All right, let's put the wheels back on. Well, we're halfway there. We did the back. Seems to be holding. Come back tomorrow when we do the front. Go ahead and move on to the front. This is a lot more difficult than the rear, so take your time, work through it, you'll be fine. And I'll be showing both sides at the same time, but the process is the same. Go ahead and disconnect the battery. We'll be working around the steering column, and we don't want the airbag to deploy. With the weight of the car, you're able to use an impact and this wrench and screwdriver method to loosen the top strut bolt. You just want to loosen it so that way it's easier when the car is in the air, but don't remove it entirely. It supports the control arm. Remove the top and bottom brake anchor plate bolts. We're going to take off the calipers next. Alright, so I've got the caliper hung up there, out of the way, and then I'm going to take the brake rotor off so we can access that, and then I'm going to turn the wheel the other way because the bolts I need to get off are back here, so I'll have more room if I rotate the tire this way. So go ahead and disconnect this ABS sensor line. That'll give you plenty of space when you're dropping the control arm. Okay, remove this bracket holding the ABS sensor line on. There's no bottom bolt, there's only a top one. All right, got the nuts removed. I'm gonna use a hammer to support this knuckle because it's gonna fall out, I think, once I pound the bolts through. I still have the sway bar and link connected, but I have the control arm supported, just making sure, extra form of precaution as I get the strut out. All right, got everything mostly loosened up. This is removed. This is loose. I have the top strut loose, and so what I'm gonna do next, the control arm is supported. I'm gonna fully remove this piece and then hopefully be able to quickly lower the control arm and remove the spring. I started the process of lowering the jack that's supporting the control arm, and note the way I've oriented the jack so that way I'm in front of the car, and if the spring is to shoot out the side, it's going to hit the camera, not me. But just do it slowly. Here's a look at the other side. You can see moving slowly. You'll hear a pop when the sway bar end link pops out of the sway bar, and lower it as much as you can, and then the spring should be decompressed. But just check, 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 check. Getting a lot of bolts here, so separating them with this carton. Ball joint, sway bar end link, and then strut pieces. I found 3 different ways to remove a ball joint or a tie rod end. One is a hammer method. The second is a pickle fork that will destroy the boot. You hammer the pickle fork in and up. And then the third is a pitman arm puller. So I was able to use the hammer on the tie rod end, and then I was able to use the ball joint puller on the ball joint, and it does pop and kind of scary the first time you do it. Well, that was convenient. I had the steering knuckle in, and I was able to break it free just by pulling up and then hammering around the knuckle. Pretty hard, but that worked out well. I was a little worried about the ball joint puller, but this worked. So, all right, so I removed the spindle. I used a pitman puller. That worked pretty well. Then I just loosened the lower control arm bolts. They're back in there. So now that gives me enough room to put the MMT8 in, and then I'll be able to jack this back up. But I gotta do the ball joint first, so I'll do that next. At this point, I realized I didn't have the right tool to press out the ball joint, so I went and got new control arms with the ball joint already pressed in. And at this step, you can see the control arm pivot bolts aren't able to be removed, so we're going to do the steering rack removal next. Remove the steering column pinch bolt and disconnect the pieces. It'll fall apart, and this will give you more access to remove the steering rack. Here's the 2 steering rack nuts I removed. Note you can use a vice grip to hold the front, but I found it a lot easier to go to the back and hold the back of the bolt with a socket. Spray the mounts with some PB Blaster, and then work the steering rack off the mounts and put it on something close. Hammer the new control arm into place and install the rear control arm pivot bolt first, and then move the control arm up for the front and install the front facing control arm pivot bolt. And then you can retorque the steering rack to spec. Put together the steering column and then tighten down the pinch bolt. It is tricky, so you can grab the tie rod end and move that to spin it in the correct direction. I'm going to reuse my sway bar links, so to remove them, I take a socket on the bottom and then a wrench in the middle, and that'll allow me to remove the sway bar link without it spinning in the middle. I was struggling to remove the top nut from the strut, and since I wasn't going to reuse the strut or the dust boot, I used the following technique. So what I did, I took the dust boot off. I was able to jack up the strut itself and then put a pair of vice grips right there. And then with the impact hammer, I just went away at it and it got right off, so good tip. Alright, so I'm going to use the new dust cover so I can get rid of the original and the fastener. This is the jounce bumper. The Bilstein doesn't need that. It has a built-in one. So then I'm gonna fix it up like this. So dust cover, lower isolator, the mount plate will go between them, and then I have the upper isolator, the steel sleeve, and then this nut and cotton cap. All right, got the MMT8. It's gonna go this way in the perch with the slot out, and then you're just gonna tighten, hand tighten first, the bolt, and then we'll fully tighten it in a second. All right, got the MMT8 centered, and then it's tightened. So let's go ahead and get the spring in next. Just kidding, I needed to lower or raise it just a little more, but got the isolators on. Gonna line up everything, put it into the perch, and there it fits in the slot. And now I can see I'll be able to compress it pretty good. I didn't get a good video here, but you want to reinstall the steering knuckle on the ball joint and tighten to spec, and then also reinstall the strut. Here I'm starting to raise the control arm very slowly and trying to get it into position. It's kind of tricky because you want to align the steering knuckle with the strut, and you can kind of move the strut to get it in the right spot, but it needs to be at the right height. And then also, as you're pushing up, you need the sway bar link to go up through the sway bar. So keeping those two pieces, you might need to press forward the sway bar link, but it'll work. And then just once you get all the pieces, you can put the strut bolts in, and then that's where you want to be. I got the tie rod end put in, but unfortunately it's not lined up, so we're gonna have to twist it a little tighter. And just a little bit more of a turn, we got it lined up. So we'll put a new cotter pin in here in a second. All right, YouTube, so tighten the two strut mount bolts, tighten the ball joint bolt, tighten the tie rod end. I have the sway bar link in there, but I didn't tighten it all the way. This is to do that at the end. And then I tightened the top as well. So I think I am safe to remove this, but we'll find out here in a second. So wish me luck. All right, let it sit for an hour or so. And looks good. I'm gonna bend this dust shield back and then start with the brake rotor, putting that back on, and then we'll get the brake on. So I'll do that here next. At this point, we're going to reinstall the rotor, the brake sensor, and the ABS sensor mount. Then we went on and put the brake anchor backing bolts on and torqued them to spec. And you can see that we reinstalled the brake pads and the slide pins, made sure the caliper fit on nicely, torqued that to spec, and then tighten the sway bar link. This is how you remove the MMT8 tool. All you do is loosen the bottom bolt, and then you can twist the tool through the control arm hole. Easy peasy. Definitely worth the $25. Alright, so got the front wheel back on. What we're gonna do last is we're gonna jack the back of the car up so it's equal. Then we're gonna raise the control arm to ride height, and then we'll tighten the control arm bolts to make sure that the bushings don't get worn prematurely. So we'll do that, and then we'll take it to the shop for alignment, and then we'll adjust the headlight. So here we go. At this point, we've raised the back, put some 2x4s under the tire, and then if you look, we more or less have it at ride height. So I guess it's a little cockeyed here, but get it at ride height. Then we're gonna go under and tighten the control arm bolt. As far outboard as I could on the control arm, I've jacked it up. It's just leaving the jack stand a little bit, not really at all. So just as little as I could, I jacked it up. Now we'll go tighten the control arm. All right, got it torqued down. Let's start the process of lowering. All right, I got the car off the jack stands, and I'll bring it in for an alignment. It cost $129, which I thought was pretty reasonable. I also had him doing a suspension inspection on some of the key nuts and bolts and make sure they were torqued to spec. But overall, what a great project. I'm really excited to have it done. The MMT8 was an invaluable tool. Definitely glad I got that. Learned a ton in the process, and let me know if you do it yourself. I'm happy to hear. So see you next week.